The Indiana Fever coaching situation has reached a breaking point, and what I'm about to show you reveals why Stephanie White's job security is now hanging by a thread. I'm Jax Riley, and I've been following the digital breadcrumbs through game film analysis, fan community discussions, and media coverage that paints a picture of systematic coaching failures that can no longer be ignored. The temperature of the conversation around Stephanie White has shifted dramatically, and the signals I'm picking up suggest we're witnessing the unraveling of what was supposed to be a championship-caliber coaching partnership. But here's what the mainstream outlets won't tell you. This isn't just about losing games. This is about strategic decisions that are costing the Fever their playoff future. I've been connecting the dots through verified sources, and what emerges is a pattern of game management failures that have pushed one of the most patient fan bases in the WNBA to their absolute limit. Let me take you through the investigation that reveals why the Fever coaching crisis has exploded into something that could define the franchise's immediate future. Here's where this story gets serious. Yahoo Sports has documented growing calls for Indiana Fever coaching change. And when legitimate sports media starts covering coaching hot seat situations, you know the pressure has reached institutional levels. The coverage isn't coming from random social media speculation. This is verified reporting on fan frustration that's reached the point where media outlets are tracking the coaching pressure as a legitimate storyline. That's not typical fan grumbling. That's organizational crisis territory. I've been reading the signals from multiple verified sources, and what emerges suggests this coaching scrutiny has moved beyond game-to-game criticism into broader questions about strategic philosophy and game management competency. The temperature around Stephanie White's job security has shifted from supportive patience to documented public pressure that's now impossible for the organization to ignore. But that brings us to the systematic issue that's driving this coaching crisis. I've been analyzing the game film and press coverage, and what emerges is a disturbing pattern of fourth-quarter game management that's costing the Fever crucial victories. The Minnesota Lynx loss provides the perfect case study. Multiple sources highlight defensive strategy failures that weren't isolated incidents. They represent systematic coaching decisions that put players in positions to fail rather than succeed. During crucial fourth-quarter moments, White's substitution timing has become a lightning rod for criticism. Fans have documented instances where momentum-changing players get benched during critical stretches, where defensive rotations leave obvious weaknesses exposed, and where timeout usage fails to address clear strategic problems. This isn't about armchair quarterbacking. This is about documented patterns that even mainstream media coverage is now highlighting as legitimate coaching concerns. Following the thread deeper, the most consistent criticism focuses on rotational decisions that seem to work against the team's natural chemistry and individual player strengths. Fans have identified specific game situations where White's substitution patterns disrupted offensive flow during crucial scoring opportunities. The digital breadcrumbs lead to detailed fan analysis documenting how rotational choices during tight games have consistently favored cautious approaches over aggressive strategies that could secure victories. When you're fighting for playoff positioning, conservative game management becomes a luxury the Fever can't afford. I've been filtering through the community discussions, and what emerges is frustration with coaching decisions that seem designed to avoid mistakes rather than capitalize on opportunities. In a league where margins are thin, that approach becomes a systematic problem. The pattern suggests coaching philosophy that prioritizes damage control over strategic aggression, and in crucial games against playoff contenders, that mindset has proven insufficient. Here's what the game film analysis reveals about the strategic failures that have pushed fan frustration to breaking point levels. The recent losses, particularly against Minnesota, showcase defensive strategy breakdowns that highlight coaching preparation issues. Multiple sources document how opposing teams have exploited consistent weaknesses in White's defensive schemes. These aren't execution failures by players. These are strategic vulnerabilities that opposing coaches have identified and attacked successfully. The temperature of legitimate basketball analysis suggests these defensive collapses result from coaching decisions about personnel deployment and strategic emphasis that leave obvious gaps in coverage. When professional scouts can predict your defensive weaknesses, that's a coaching problem, not a player problem. But here's what makes this a crisis rather than just criticism. The pattern is escalating rather than improving, and it's happening during the most crucial games of the season. Now let's connect this coaching scrutiny to the mathematical reality facing the Indiana Fever. At 19-18, dropped to 8th place, with 7 games remaining against playoff contenders, there's no margin for error in coaching decisions. Every strategic mistake, every questionable rotation, every defensive scheme failure carries exponential consequences when you're fighting for playoff qualification rather than playoff seeding. White's coaching decisions aren't just about individual games anymore, they're about organizational survival in what was supposed to be a breakthrough season. The signals suggest this pressure is creating exactly the environment where coaching job security becomes tied directly to playoff qualification. Miss the playoffs with this roster, with these expectations, and organizational changes become inevitable. That's not speculation. That's institutional logic in professional sports environments where championship expectations meet playoff survival reality. I've been monitoring authentic WNBA community discussions, and the sentiment evolution around Stephanie White represents a dramatic transformation from supportive patience to documented frustration that's reached breaking point levels. The WNBA community discussions show fans who initially defended White's coaching approach now questioning strategic decisions with detailed game analysis and statistical evidence. This isn't emotional overreaction, this is informed criticism from engaged fans who understand basketball strategy. The digital temperature suggests community patience has been exhausted by repeated strategic failures during crucial games. When knowledgeable fans start providing alternative strategic approaches with supporting evidence, coaching pressure becomes legitimate rather than reactionary. This community shift matters because it reflects broader organizational pressure that extends beyond immediate game results into questions about strategic competency and adaptation capability. But here's what takes this from coaching criticism to coaching crisis: the pattern of game management failures during the most crucial moments of the most important games. The fourth quarter becomes a laboratory for strategic decision-making under pressure, and the results have been consistently problematic. Timeout usage that fails to address obvious momentum shifts, substitution patterns that disrupt offensive rhythm during scoring opportunities, defensive adjustments that come too late to prevent scoring runs. These aren't isolated incidents, they represent systematic game management issues. I've been connecting the dots through game recaps and press conference analysis, and what emerges suggests coaching decisions that consistently favor theoretical approaches over game situation adaptation. In crucial moments, that inflexibility becomes a competitive disadvantage. The temperature around these game management issues has reached the point where media coverage now tracks White's fourth-quarter decisions as storylines independent of game results. Following the thread deeper reveals what might be the core issue driving this coaching crisis. White's strategic philosophy appears designed for different personnel and different game situations than what the Fever actually faced during crucial contests. The coaching approach that works during regular season games against weaker opponents becomes insufficient during playoff positioning battles against elite competition. The strategic adjustments required for high-stakes basketball seem absent from White's game management toolkit. Multiple sources suggest this philosophical mismatch has become more apparent as games become more important and opponents become more strategic in their approach to exploiting Fever weaknesses. This isn't about coaching competency in general. This is about strategic adaptation under playoff pressure, and the evidence suggests that adaptation isn't happening at the required level. Which brings us to the inevitable organizational question that's driving media coverage and fan discussion. How long can the Indiana Fever maintain coaching continuity when strategic decisions consistently undermine playoff positioning during crucial games? The mathematics become simple when you consider organizational expectations, fan engagement, corporate partnerships, and franchise credibility, all tied to performance metrics that coaching decisions directly impact. Missing playoffs because of strategic failures creates institutional pressure that extends far beyond game results. I've been reading the organizational signals, and what emerges suggests decision-makers understand the stakes involved. When Yahoo Sports starts covering coaching pressure as legitimate storyline, that reflects institutional awareness that changes may become necessary. The temperature suggests organizational patience with strategic failures is approaching exhaustion, particularly when those failures occur during the most crucial games of what was supposed to be a championship-contention season. Here's what the institutional logic reveals about the pressure facing Stephanie White's job security. The fever invested in championship expectations, corporate partnerships, and fan engagement based on performance metrics that coaching decisions directly influence. When strategic failures cost games that determine playoff qualification, when game management mistakes undermine organizational credibility, when coaching decisions become storylines that overshadow player performance, that creates exactly the institutional pressure that leads to organizational changes. The digital breadcrumbs suggest front office decision-makers are tracking coaching performance metrics that extend beyond win-loss records into strategic competency evaluations during crucial game situations. This pressure isn't about individual coaching preferences, it's about institutional survival in an environment where championship expectations meet strategic reality during playoff positioning battles. What makes this coaching scrutiny legitimate rather than reactionary is the evolution of media coverage from supportive analysis to documented criticism that's now tracked as organizational storyline by major sports outlets. Yahoo Sports coverage represents institutional recognition that coaching pressure has reached levels where job security becomes legitimate discussion topic rather than speculation. When mainstream sports media treats coaching hot seat situations as verified storyline, organizational pressure becomes impossible to ignore. I've been following this media evolution, and what emerges suggests reporting that's moved beyond game recaps into strategic analysis that consistently highlights coaching decision-making as problematic during crucial situations. This media attention creates additional institutional pressure because organizational credibility becomes tied to addressing documented strategic failures that are now part of public record. Let me break down the mathematical reality that's driving this coaching crisis. The Indiana Fever have dropped from playoff seeding position to playoff survival mode during a stretch where coaching decisions have been consistently questioned by fans, media, and basketball analysts. The correlation between strategic failures and organizational decline isn't coincidental. It represents systematic issues that coaching changes are specifically designed to address. When teams underperform expectations because of strategic decisions, institutional response becomes predictable. The signals suggest this statistical decline during crucial games has created exactly the performance metrics that justify organizational changes in professional sports environments where results determine employment security. But here's what transforms coaching criticism into coaching crisis: the apparent inability to adapt strategic approaches based on game results and opponent adjustments. The same strategic mistakes repeated during crucial games suggest systematic problems that coaching continuity won't solve. Professional basketball requires strategic adaptation under pressure, and the evidence suggests White's coaching approach lacks the flexibility required for playoff positioning battles against elite competition. The strategic rigidity that works in some situations becomes competitive disadvantage during crucial contests. I've been analyzing the game patterns, and what emerges suggests opposing coaches have identified exploitable weaknesses in White's strategic approach that aren't being addressed through tactical adjustments or personnel changes. This adaptation failure creates cumulative competitive disadvantage that compounds with each crucial game, making organizational changes increasingly inevitable. The most damning aspect of this coaching crisis might be the detailed analysis coming from engaged fan communities who understand basketball strategy and can document specific strategic failures with supporting evidence. The WNBA discussions include game film analysis, statistical breakdowns, and alternative strategic approaches that highlight specific coaching decisions as problematic rather than unlucky. This isn't emotional criticism, this is informed analysis that's harder to dismiss. When knowledgeable fans can predict coaching failures before they happen based on pattern recognition, that creates institutional pressure that extends beyond game results into questions about strategic competency that organizational decision-makers can't ignore, which connects to the ultimate pressure driving this coaching crisis: the organizational stakes tied to playoff qualification in what was supposed to be a championship-contention season. Missing playoffs because of strategic failures creates institutional crisis that extends far beyond coaching employment into questions about organizational competency, decision-making processes, and competitive standards that define franchise credibility. The temperature suggests everyone understands these stakes, but understanding and successfully navigating represent different challenges when strategic adaptation appears insufficient for crucial game situations. Based on the institutional logic and performance metrics tracking, the next crucial games represent a decisive period for coaching job security. Strategic failures during playoff positioning battles create exactly the performance evidence that justifies organizational changes. If the pattern of fourth-quarter game management problems continues, if defensive strategic failures persist, if rotational decisions keep undermining competitive advantages during crucial games, the institutional response becomes predictable. The signals suggest organizational patience with strategic underperformance is approaching exhaustion, particularly when those failures occur during games that determine playoff qualification and organizational credibility. So what's documented and what remains evaluation? The Yahoo Sports coverage of coaching pressure, verified. The fan community criticism with supporting analysis, documented. The game management failures during crucial contests, tracked by multiple sources. The organizational stakes tied to playoff qualification, institutional reality. The central question about coaching job security, that gets determined by whether strategic adaptation can address systematic problems before playoff positioning becomes mathematically impossible. This isn't just coaching criticism anymore. This is institutional crisis management around strategic performance that's fallen below organizational expectations during crucial games that determine franchise credibility. The Indiana Fever coaching situation has exploded into legitimate job security questions because strategic failures have created performance metrics that professional organizations are specifically designed to address through personnel changes. I'll keep following the institutional signals and strategic patterns that reveal how organizations handle coaching pressure during playoff positioning battles. The temperature of authentic coaching analysis depends on tracking verified performance metrics rather than speculation about personnel preferences. What do you think about these strategic failures and organizational responses? The discussion around coaching competency during crucial games matters for understanding how professional sports address systematic underperformance. Don't forget to subscribe for coaching analysis that prioritizes strategic evaluation over speculation, and share this investigation with anyone interested in understanding the institutional pressure facing Stephanie White's job security. The coaching crisis investigation continues, and the strategic performance questions become more critical with each crucial game that determines playoff qualification and organizational credibility.